I usually take for my topic on Easter the role of Christ's resurrection in each one of our lives, our personal encounter with that, and how it changes us. But today, I'd like to take a bigger picture and remind us of what Jesus' suffering, death, and resurrection means for the whole human race by use of a sort of a topical issue. And that's artificial intelligence. So about a year and a half ago, there was an explosion of interest in these as the artificial intelligence really took off. In reading various media, I've noticed a real increase of frequently mentioning some real kind of wild possibilities out there that what I call the technology lords of Silicon Valley are up to. So they're dreaming of transhumanism, uploading of our minds to computers, joining ourselves to machines in such a way that we'll never die, that we can achieve immortality, etc. And I was thinking, this is not a new idea. This is all over past cultures in terms of all the stories, the myths, vampire stories, people living forever. This is common. If you know me, if you've been here for a while, you know I'm a big fan of J.R.R. Tolkien, kind of a Tolkien nerd. And so I was just reading his letters last month. He had a collected edition of his letters. And it was interesting. I was surprised to see how current his interests and his worries were of what his work was about. And so a major theme of his work is this real debate or conflict about death. Is death something that is purely evil and we have to do everything we can to avoid it, work against it, via technology/magic? So he mentioned it in his stories, magic works as technology in that culture. And so that's one possibility. Or is it a severe gift that lets us enter a better world? So I know not all of you are Tolkien fans, but for those of you who are, and otherwise just kind of park your brain otherwise. But in Middle Earth, Tolkien's world, the elves are immortal. And human beings envy them for this. But the elves themselves see this as a two-edged sword, this immortality. So they see it actually as a burden because they can't let go of the real but limited beauty of this world. They've been put in here, they have these great gifts, artistic gifts, creatives, and yet they can't let go. And so they linger here rather than crossing the sea to their own immortality and the immortal lands. They have fallen in love with this world and can't leave it. So they call death the gift of God to men. Now, these are other creatures in this world. The ring race, 9 of them. These are men who never die. So again, they're immortal in that sense, but they're tortured by this deathlessness. They're trapped in the desire for power and immortality. So the magic rings, remember, technology and magic are the same in his world. These 9 rings give them this quasi-immortality, but they also control them. And so for thousands and thousands of years, they live these kind of shadowy, extended, stretched out lives, doing the evil Lord's will. So they're controlled by him in that way, through these rings. I can go on, but you get the point. I'm just saying that these kind of ideas were once the subject of fantasy and myth and story, but due to our own technology, almost like magic, it's a real possibility. So some of the most powerful people on earth, they're actively seeking the power not to die. And they explicitly use the language of becoming omniscient, immortal gods. So that's what I want to preach about today is simply life, death, Jesus. So in our gospel, and actually all the gospels, they deal with the resurrection. We see Jesus' friends have these whole gamut of emotions. So they see or hear about his torturous death, his horrible experience, and seemingly the loss of everything. And yet they also have, as we see today, this idea of they've heard that he's risen from the tomb. Some see him, some touch him. And so there's the idea Jesus died, and yet through that death now lives in a brand new way, united with the Father in heaven. And so they have these 2 different ideas, the horrible pain of death, and yet he's transcended this. So the immortality that scientists and programmers are seeking is something different than that. One thing I want to mention, that's my point. These are not the same thing. What they're seeking here on earth, this is to be a curse. We would become like ring wraiths. So most people who like Tolkien also like C.S. Lewis. So I'm true to that. So C.S. Lewis once said this to kind of fit in. He said, we're like eggs at present. And you can't go on indefinitely just being an ordinary decent egg. We must either hatch or go bad. So again, in this scheme, death is not an end, but the hatching of sorts. Something new. And, we see this in terms of even our liturgy at Easter. We see this huge Easter candle that everybody who's baptized, like last night, they take a light from the candle. This is their faith being handed on by Christ, who's the light of the world. Well, everybody's funeral, if you go to a Catholic funeral, the same candle is by the casket because this is their second baptism. They're going into a different life. So Peter Kreeft, Catholic philosopher, I think he's retired now, but he made this analogy between a person entering the next life through death and a person entering this life through physical birth. So if you're a baby, so he uses this idea, this unborn baby. So if you're in the womb, there's a wonderful world out there to explore and to grow in, but you don't know anything about that. And you need to be born first. And that's involving pain and struggle. That's the rub. So the unborn baby's content in this little world of the womb. Warm and safe, never seen this other world. Why should he assume this is better? Birth actually, from the baby's theme, this seems like a losing deal. Why do I want to do that? I'm good. Similarly, we've been told about the next life, but we know this life. We've experienced it. Why would I want to leave it? And so like the elves, we struggle to stay here. But just as for the baby, there comes a time that you're due, 9 months, and it's time to be born. Similarly with us, there's a time for us to be born to new life, to die. And so as with birth, so with our death, we're going to discover it's not the end. Death is like this midwife that bears us into a world and a life that we resist entering, but we were made for it, nonetheless. So this is a life won for us by Christ that will be our glory. And it's not God's original plan, but it's now necessary if we're going to hatch. So, mentioning these stories, the original story of this is Genesis chapter 3, book of Genesis. This is the original story of human beings trying to grasp for divinity in this world. So God warns Adam and Eve in the story, you remember, that they can do whatever they want. They have immortality. They have this relationship with God. They have it. Except don't eat of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, that tree, or you're going to die. You're going to lose it all. The devil, though, goes there and says, no, you certainly will not die. The moment you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like gods. God's trying to keep you from being gods. Don't fall for it. So this is the original grasping for divinity of Adam and Eve. And they were driven from the garden. They lose what they had because of this grasping. And then the story ends with God's setting this guard of cherubim with flaming swords at the gate of Eden. You can't come back in. You're gone. You can't come back that way. We can't hack our way back into Eden via human power and technology. The only way to everlasting life and true immortality is not to go back, but to go forward. We have to go through the suffering, death, resurrection that Christ led us through. So, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to meld ourselves to computers. I always say, I have a flip phone. I don't know about that. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. Maybe those weird things are happening, things are going fast. But the desire's there, isn't it? All I'm saying is human desire for exactly the same thing is there. and it's coming out. And our current fascination with living forever, that's a seductive lie whispered to us by the devil. It's like this, hey, there are trillions of dollars to be made in this. Or if we don't, the Chinese still will. We got to do it. We should do it. We can do it. Why wouldn't we do it? It's not going to end well. It never has. It's a demonic trick straight from the garden, and we're falling for it again. So the reason we celebrate Easter with joy is that Easter is God's answer to the expulsion of Eden and the human beings' two biggest fears. The first fear is death. Easter is the answer to that. And the second great desire is immortality, to live forever. Easter is the answer to that. So as Catholic Christians, our way through this troubled times, and these are difficult, strange times. Again, kind of cultural earthquakes, technological things happening. Our way through this is to resist the temptation of this false immortality and face death as faithfully as we can, as faithfully as Jesus himself did. Because we die with him, so we rise with him. So that's the only way to heaven. The only way to become our true selves and enter the true glory of Christ's life itself. He's offering us a chance to unite with him himself. And the way we do that is through the Paschal mystery we've just celebrated these last 3 days.